Hey fellas, happy Father's Day to you fellas out there. Welcome to part 2 of HobbyBoss's 1/18 scale AV8B Harrier. In this exciting episode, the only thing I tackle is the ejection seat. And I didn't plan on doing one single video on just the ejection seat. I would have liked to just do a video on detailing the cockpit, but to be honest with you, there's so much detail lacking in the cockpit area and the ejection seat that I just started filming, and I got about 30 minutes worth of material on just the seat. So that's all there is in this one. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get on with the video. Okay, so I'm going to start off my detailing of the interior with the ejection seat. Now, this is pretty plain, and I've already started working on it. I've added this little lever here with some plastic card and just glued it on. From what I've been able to decipher from the pictures, this really isn't totally accurate, the way they have the seat molded, but we'll work with it and we'll try to improve it a little bit. Now, there was a big seam line running right along through here. This was just a big solid piece. So I went ahead and I cut that out to be, you know, from what I've seen, there's like an opening here, and the headrest is connected by some, looks like some rods and all kinds of other things. So I just went ahead and cut that out, basically drilled four holes, and then took my Dremel tool and dremeled it out, filed it and sanded it, and I think that will suffice. One major issue are these rubber seat pads. So they're rubber, just like the tires. In fact, they come off, I think, the same sprue. And if you've ever tried to paint rubber, it doesn't stick very well, and it's just not very realistic. So I'm going to do away with those, and I've already started. And what I'm doing is I've glued together 3 pieces of, I think it was 0.05 millimeter plastic card. I've just sandwiched them together so I can get a nice thick piece. And this is going to be the back cushion, and I'm actually increasing the size of it just a bit, so it will come in here just like this. So I've really made this really deep, so I can come in here and I can carve out. I'm going to take my Dremel tool and I'll show you this, but I'm going to make it thinner down here and then thicker on the side pieces, so it's going to look like a cushion. It's just not going to be a flat piece. Now, once I get that done, then I'll go ahead and cover it with my medical tape. And if you watch my video on the shuttle build where I did the thermal blankets, I used this medical tape. It's got a nice cloth texture. So I'm going to add that to it as well. And here is the bottom seat pad. And I don't know if the light will pick it up, but I did carve just a little bit of indentions where their butt would have sat, so it looks a little more cushiony like. And then that fits in here just like this. So I made these the exact same way, just sandwich pieces of plastic card together, and it'll fit in here just like so. And then I also did the headrest the same way, although I only used one piece of plastic card. And then that's going to fit just like this. And I can just glue this onto the back like so. I think that's going to add a little bit more realism. And then of course I'll come in here and make some seat belts, and I'll probably go over that as well, how I'm going to go about that. So I'm gonna get to filing this. What I want to do first is file this down, this back piece, so I can get the shape that I want on the width and the height, and so that it fits inside here. And then I will get to getting my Dremel tool out and basically carving out what I think the seat cushion should look like. All right, let's take a look at the cushions. Now for this back piece, after I carved it out, I added these thin strips of .01 millimeter plastic card and spaced them out so I could get these nice ridges, and then I laid down my medical tape over top of that. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you should seal this stuff in after you get it laid down, because that fabric will absorb the paint. So what I use to seal it in is Mod Podge, and I use the matte stuff for it, and it seems to work pretty good. That way the paint just doesn't soak in. It doesn't take as many coats. I redid the headrest because after looking at some of the pictures, it looks like the fabric actually wraps around, because I believe what I think what it is the upper harnesses come around and attach somewhere up here, and that's the harness, I think, is probably what's supposed to be showing through on this raised area on the headrest. So I went ahead and just cut these flaps and fit it over there, and then I rolled it around some plastic tubing, so once I get it painted I can put it on there and then just glue these down. So I think that's going to work out quite nicely. Now I've debated about whether to put everything together and then paint it, because I'm gonna have to make seat belts for it, and I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna do that yet. And but there's pros and cons with both ways. If I glue everything down now and get everything straightened up, I'm gonna have to do and then prime it. I'm gonna have to do a lot more hand painting. And since this is and that really wouldn't be that big of an issue if it's a 1/32 scale or a 1/48 scale, but with this bigger scale, you're really going to see a lot of the detail and see a lot of the hand painting mistakes that you would normally see with a smaller scale. So I've opted to prime these separately. I'm going to paint the seat. I'm going to airbrush the seat cushions. I'll do some shading, some post shading and pre-shading on the cushions and spray those a khaki. I'll I'll airbrush this black with the primer, and then I'll do dry brushing and then hand paint some of the details. Then I will probably put the seat cushions in, basically get the seat taken care of, and then I'll work on the seat belts after I get everything together and painted, which I'm not quite sure how that's gonna all work out, but we'll get through it. Now on the seat, I did add some details like this little lever here. Now I've got a little piece of plastic tubing that I glued onto there, and I made out this little lever with some stretch sprue and just carved it out. Now this is a little bit longer. This is, I guess, the safety lever. So when this is in the up position like it is, the ejection seat's not armed, but then once the pilot gets in, I assume he just flips that down and it arms the ejection seat. So I've left this a little bit long so it's going to be easier to paint. It's going to be a yellow and a black stripe with a black stripe on it. And then once I get it all painted, I can cut it down and just insert it into my little tube there. Some other little details that I've added. I did extended the back part to match the height that I've added to the seat. It looked a little short to me. I've added these little rivets and bolts and stuff right here, and where I got those was from a MAK, the Machining Krieger kits, sci-fi kits. I don't know. I don't think I've ever done a build video on one, but they're pretty popular. They a lot of times they'll come with these like rivets that you can just cut out, and these bolts and stuff. So I always save these because they do come in handy. So that's what I've used for some of these details, like right up here, and all these little bolts. Now you can use just stretch sprue like I've got. I always keep some stretch sprue around that I don't have to do, various sizes. You can just chop those up into little bitty pieces and put them on there. But since I had these, I went ahead and just used these. So that's where we're at. I'm gonna get to painting this and get it together, and then we'll work on the seat belts. All right, so I'm gonna make my seatbelt buckles first. Oh man, my back. So what I'm doing, how I'm making the seatbelt buckles, I've got some .02 plastic card, and I've cut off a strip that I'm gonna use to make my buckle, and it's gonna be I wanna cut off a strip that's gonna be as wide as the buckle's gonna be. So I wanna make it wide enough to where I can create an opening and then thread a appropriate size seatbelt or tape. I'm going to be using tape for the actual seatbelt. Then I'm going to thread this through, so I want it a little bit wider than the tape. And I want to make an opening for my tape to thread through. So I'm just going to take my X-Acto blade and carefully cut out a little square opening. And you really have to be careful because I'm cutting it so thin that these edges have a tendency to pop off. And this one may, because I cut it a little too close to the edge. This isn't very thick stuff, but when you start doing small little cuts like this, it has a tendency to break in places that you don't want it to break. Okay? So I'm just going to come in here and try to even these out. Okay, wow. So I've got something that looks like that. And I'm going to deepen this just a little bit. So I'm just basically just carving out the rest of this to get it to the shape that I want. Okay? So now I've got, I will take my stretch sprue. Go ahead and dump some of this out. This might be a little too thick, but that's okay. So I'm going to cut out my stretch sprue, and I'm going to cut it to the width of this. And if you cut it a little long, that's okay. You can trim it. So I've got my sprue. Now I'm going to take some, to make it extra thin, you really have to be dainty with this and have a delicate touch. And I'm just going to put some quick setting extra thin on here. And take my stretch sprue. You got to be quick because this quick setting stuff sets up really quick. There we go. That wasn't too bad. Well, son of a gun. Okay, so there I've got my buckle, and hopefully that will stay. Okay, and I've already started one over here, so I'm just going to snip this off. And then I'm going to cut out a little sliver. And then I'm going to add a little bit more to me extra thin right here. And then we're going to set this down at an angle. And this is a little bit tricky. Just like so. Okay. That should be good. And then I'll just come along and cut this. All right, and then there I have my buckle. And I did this one pretty quick, and this is just to demonstrate what I've done. But there's my buckle. I'll set this aside. And once all that extra thin cures up, then you can come along and trim it up and make sure that you can kind of neaten it up a little bit, because right now it's kind of rough. Okay, so let's show you how I'm gonna make. On the upper harnesses, there's like some pads, and these are ones that I made, and I really didn't like how they turned out, but the idea is there. So I'm gonna go ahead and redo these, and I'll show you how I do those. But there's this padding that goes around the seat belt up on the upper harness, and I'll show you how I do that. All right, so here are the buckles that we just made, and I'm wanting to recreate these. They look like pads that fit around the seat belts in the upper harness. And I think we've got a better picture here, if you can take a look at these. So they're going to be a lot thicker. And what I saw somebody on the internet use was heat shrink tubing and lead foil. So let's get this out of the way. Lighting. Okay, so this is lead foil. I've already cut a strip. It's going to be about as wide as my seat belt. Now, you can use this stuff for seat belts, but I haven't had much luck with it. It's really moldable and pliable because it is lead. It's kind of, don't lick your fingers after you handle this stuff, and wash your hands. But it's pretty thick stuff. I'm not sure where I got this. It came in one of my multimedia kits at one point, and so there we go. But it's really thick stuff, but it's going to really work out for what we're going to do next. Now, I've also got some electrical heat shrink tubing. I've got some white and some blue, and I'm going to cut a strip off. Get my knife. Just going to cut a couple strips off. And I'm also going to cut some heat shrink tubing as well. And I will just put this inside of here. Just like so. And do another one. And let's get a candle out. I always keep these little bitty candles around for this kind of stuff and for stretching sprue. Okay. So then all I'll have to do is heat shrink this, and it will conform to that lead wire or that lead foil in there. And we'll have our little wrap around our upper harness. In fact, let me get my tweezers here. Set that aside, and we'll do the other one. Now we're going to cut this to length, so you want to cut it a little longer. And once we get it to where we've got a section we can work with, we'll just cut it down to size. And we're going to paint these, so there's no need to get this a little tighter. The more you heat this up, the tighter it gets. All right. Now we're going to cut off a little piece of this blue because there's a little bit thicker portion down towards the bottom. Okay. All right. Blow this out a minute. Now I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to cut this off right at the end and make a clean cut. So now these are the buckles that I'm going to use. And what I'm going to do when I'm done is I've just threaded some tape through my buckles here. And when I'm done, I'm just going to glue these onto the back so it looks just like that. Okay? But we need to get these lined up properly with our seat. So let me get my seat over here and pull this out. So we're going to want to really cut these down to size, but we're also going to want it folded up. Okay, so let's relight our thing, our candle. I'm going to need a new lighter. There we go. Okay, now this heat shrink tubing doesn't allow the lead foil to hold its position. So what you have to do is heat it up. And this should allow you to bend it so it'll hold its position. Like so. Just like that. So I'm going to have to come in here and figure out how much I'm going to need and how it's going to look on there and just mold it to shape. Okay. So I know I can probably cut some more of this off. I don't want to cut too much. And then it will fit in here. It'll fit underneath this pad that I got here. It'll wedge right up in there and I can glue it in. And that should look pretty good. Just like so. So I'm going to work with this and twist it and manipulate it, but you get the idea of what I'm going for. So once I get these done, then I can go ahead and I can paint these and then attach my seat, my buckles, and then glue it onto here. Now for the actual seat belt, what I like to use is this tester's tape, and I'll just cut it into strips and then lace it around my buckle, and then I can put it on the model or put it on the seat and then paint it. With the ones that I used on the bottom here, I just used some ink and put some just to darken it up because I actually like the color. Whether or not it's completely accurate or not, I don't know, but it just gives it a dirty, grimy look to it and takes away some of that translucency that this tape has. So there we go. I will get this together. I'll get it painted, and then we'll take a look at the finished seat. All right, fellas, let's take a look at this seat. Now, I'm 99% done. There are a few little things I'll probably add later. There are a couple little packets, I'm not sure what they are, that fit on the outside of these buckles. I may add those. There are also some leg straps and some other harness or straps and stuff up here on the upper harness that I'm probably supposed to put in, but I'm not exactly sure how all that works. So I may put that in later, but overall I'm pretty happy with it. I'm just kind of tired of dicking with this thing, so I'm going to be done with it for now. So I'm going to call it finished until I decide to add more stuff, which will probably happen. So for these rods here, instead of painting those, I used bare metal foil, hammered it down with a cotton swab, and then cut off the excess. And I think I like that a lot better than trying to get in there and paint it, which you never can really get good lines trying to paint it. For decals, I just took some decals from my spares box and put them on there. I think these turned out really nice. I think they look pretty close to what's in the pictures. If it's at least a representation of what that padding's supposed to be, and I think that looks pretty good. The tube or I think these are like oxygen hoses and communication wires or something, but that's just lead wire that I wrapped with tape and then painted. I could probably redo those and make them look a little bit better, but I think once they're inside the cockpit with all the other stuff going on, I think they'll suffice. I got my arming lever in and in the correct position for how I'm going to have this, and the ejection handle was a kit part, but I did have to cut a notch down here in my homemade seat for that to fit into. But there we go. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. It's 100 times better than just slapping those rubber pads on here and calling it a day. So I hope this helps you out if you're building this kit and want to add a little bit more detail. And on the next episode, we will tackle this crappy instrument panel. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do this, if I'm going to cut off all the detail and redo it, or if I'm just going to start anew and scratch build the whole thing. So I've already got a piece cut out just in case that's the route I want to go. So we will tackle that on the next episode. Thanks for watching, fellas. I'll see you then.